paying attention to this agency and autonomy is really kind of giving the kid a sense that you kind of are feeling some compassion for the situation that they're in. You're kind of honoring their status as maybe an adolescent or a 10 to 25-year-old that's kind of figuring out their way in life. But one way we need to do this is to kind of honors kids' status by not telling them stuff, maybe not like grown-splaining. You need to show what you want to understand. What are some good tips that parents can use to do that better?
There's this wonderful parenting coach that I write about in my book named Laurie Santos, and she echoes something that has shown up a lot in the different research literatures, and it's this idea of questioning is often more powerful than telling. Mm-hmm. And before I explain it, I do want to acknowledge that most normal parents think this is crazy advice, because when like the macaroni's burning on the stove and the repairman's at the door and you're late for soccer practice and like everything's going wrong, that doesn't feel like the time to have a Socratic dialogue, right? And then everyone's going to be late for everything. And I get it. But at some point, if you don't treat every single crisis as a chance to build a skill, then you've missed out on tons and tons of opportunities for the kid to learn to proactively manage the conflicts that they have, whether it's their internal conflicts, their emotions, or conflicts with other adults. So Lorena has this never waste a crisis mentality that I've tried to live, that even if it's like I'm trying to get 3 kids out the door in the morning so I'm not late for an appointment, it's like I've had to learn to stop and pause and be curious about why, from their perspective, it's very hard for them to get in the car and not wear a Spider-Man costume. So the idea is ask questions. Okay, so what kind of questions? Now, there's bad questions. A bad question would be, what are you thinking? Or why are you ruining my life? Those would not be good questions to ask a kid. But better questions are things like, all right, you seem really upset. Tell me, what does it mean to you when I'm saying no to the toy? Or what does it mean to you when I said this to you? And then they usually say something outrageous, like, it means you don't love me. It means you're a bad parent. It means you hate me, or I'm a bad kid, right? And then it's like, the next question is like, what else could it mean? And sometimes they'll say a couple other negative things, like, you don't love me, or this will never get better, I'm going to be sad forever. And then the next question is, okay, if it meant that, would that serve your purposes? Like, does that meet your goals? And that's a surprising question for a lot of kids. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, it doesn't serve my goals to think my mom hates me and that she's a bad parent. It's like, all right, well, then what else could it mean? And then eventually you can involve them in generating a different and better appraisal, we call it in psychology, of the conflict. And then once they have that better appraisal, then you can say things like, all right, well, if this better thing was true, would that meet your goals? And then often they're like, yeah. So a very brief example is conflict with my now 8-year-old. When he was 6, we were leaving the park. I played with him all day. It's like, you just got 3 hours of one-on-one playtime. So you should be very grateful. And instead he asked for a toy. I was like, no, there's no toy. And he screamed at the top of his lung publicly in front of all the other parents, like, I want a toy. And then I had to ask him, how does it make you feel that I'm saying no? And this felt ridiculous to say, of course. And then he yelled at the top of his lungs, "You're the worst father," in front of all the other strangers. And then I went through this question. Does it serve your purposes? That caught him off guard. No, it'd make me feel sad. Well, what else could it be? And then he made up something good. Like, it means my dad doesn't want us to buy a toy that I'm going to throw away and break, because then I'm going to be sad later. And then if it's a plastic toy, there's going to be more plastic in the landfill, and that's going to hurt the earth. And maybe my dad doesn't want to destroy the earth. And I was like, well, how would that make you feel if that was true? And he was like, well, it made me feel like my dad cares about the future of the environment and doesn't want me to grow up in a trash heap, and also wants me to learn how to be responsible. And I was like, would that serve your purposes? He's like, yeah, it'd make me feel like my dad loved me. I was like, can we go with that?
What's incredible is, like, if we get curious, if we kind of lead with curiosity, not judgment, we do 2 things. One is, like, we learn that our kids are capable and they are competent at coming up with these good interpretations and things. But I think it also trains them to get a little bit more curious about their own emotions and think, well, maybe I don't have, my first impression of this situation might look differently, or maybe my parent has a different intention. So it's kind of like we're learning to re-navigate, their feelings on this. At the same time, we're teaching them to learn to navigate our new intentions on these things too.
The big thing is it's such a pain as a parent when your kids fight 2 rooms over and you have to leave whatever you're doing and go over there and say, how many times have I told you guys, don't be mean to your brother, stop fighting. And we're always the referee in that situation. And so we are the only one doing the problem solving. And so of course they don't learn. It's because we've never asked them to even try to do it. If they've never had to piece it together in their minds, if the only time we ask questions is when we're trying to make them look dumb, like, haven't I told you this before? Well, the only answer is yes, but the implication is we think they're dumb. And so if that's all we've ever done, then of course we're going to have to keep stepping in as the referee. But if we're just tired of doing that, then you have to start giving them the coach in the head that they can carry with them. And I'll tell you what, I've seen that Lorena Seidel, this parenting coach, I've seen families she's worked with, and they do this questioning routine a lot with their kids. It's tedious, but eventually the kids know the 6 questions. And so she can just yell from across the room, what did it mean when your sister did that? And then they do the whole thing in their head. And they're like, okay, fine, Mom. I know my sister loves me. We won't fight anymore. And so like, if you want to have the kind of house, not with no fighting or no crying, but where conflicts get resolved in a way where you end up feeling excited for them to go off into the world and to deal with conflict, and that they're going to be prepared to live with someone and not get in fights all the time and not be alone, in their 20s and 30s. These are the times right now to teach those lessons. And it's a little bit of extra time, but you save yourself a hassle in the long run.